So, Harriet, thank you so much for joining me today for, I suppose, the discussion on your expertise. I think what's also quite interesting is that you've come into nutrition from, I suppose, like a bit of an unorthodox route. You've become a medical doctor first, and then you've trained as a nutritionist after, which I think is really interesting. Would you be able to tell everyone listening or everyone watching a little bit about yourself?
So hi, I'm Dr. Harriet Holme. Thank you so much for having me on here. It's a real pleasure. So yes, you're absolutely right. I did come into nutrition through a sort of more tortuous route than many. So I studied medicine at the University of Cambridge, and then finished that off at UCL in London, University College London. And then 15 years ago, almost to the day, I started as a doctor on the wards, and I was a paediatric doctor, ultimately specialising in paediatric oncology. Did lots of research-based laboratory stuff as well on my way through, and did a PhD in cancer genetics. And then after that, realised that actually I didn't really want to go back to medicine. I wanted to focus more on nutrition, which I'd seen a lot of through my through pediatric oncology, and also doing my PhD on genetics. I was really interested in the microbiota, so all your gut and bacteria in that, and that sort of focused my interest on nutrition. So then I became a registered nutritionist with the Association for Nutrition, and I lecture in culinary science and nutrition, and I was commissioned to write the sort of first of its kind degree on culinary science, so culinary nutrition and health. So that's to sort of educate mainly the chefs of tomorrow about why nutrition is so important. Not just that food tastes great, but it's good for you as well.
And one thing that I find quite interesting, obviously, you must go into. I would assume that you went into medicine because you wanted to help people. Would you say, and I'll try and make this as clear cut as possible, would you say that you feel that nutrition provides more of an avenue of helping people than allopathic medicine, or just as much, or it does but in a different way? How would you diversify it, or how would you split them?
So I think I did absolutely go into medicine partly to help people, or mainly to help people, but equally because I found it really interesting and I loved the sort of problem solving side of it. So for me, nutrition has a lot of that, but in a sort of easier to digest way, I guess, that less, people at the end of the day are generally not dying. You can actually affect change really quite easily. So some of the things I was seeing in medicine, so in pediatric oncology, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, all of those things are incredibly important, and nutrition can help along the sidelines, but chemotherapy and things really take center stage. So medicine is really, really important, but nutrition really does have its role, and I think people are just beginning to realize, if you've got blood results that sort of show that you're pre-diabetic, you can really affect change. You can really change your diet and reverse that and stop developing actually diabetes. So I think it's in its infancy. People are really only just realizing how important it is, and how it is as important in some cases as conventional medicine, but I think it all really needs to work together. There's no point in having one without the other, and certainly not an advocate for people just treating cancer with diet or supplements and those type of things. I think it really, to work well, you need all aspects of it. You need the medical team, nutrition, you need all of it to work really well and together.
Do you think that good nutrition or good lifestyle could be used to delay the interaction with, I suppose, a medical doctor or more medical procedures?
Yes, absolutely. So certainly there's really good, clear evidence that your diet affects your long-term risk of disease on so many levels, cancer, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, bone health, and it's really important. So, and one thing is, it's so much more in your control than medical interactions and taking medicines. And And I think always prevention is key and so much better than taking medicines that aren't without their, side effects. So if you can effect change with your own diet and prevent their long-term health issues, I think that's going to be a really powerful, really great thing. And so many problems in health are, because of your diet, really. So and that's one thing I love about nutrition, that you can help so many people by just doing some really simple changes that have really no side effects, other than, got to have a bit more preparation, a bit more time, or a bit more thought.
And based on that, going by that analogy means that essentially everyone's got their own medicine cabinet every time they go to the greengrocer section of their supermarket or something, or even their greengrocers if they're lucky to have one in their town. So
Yeah,
if that's
absolutely.
the case, what do you think are the greatest barriers to someone becoming, I suppose, more attuned with nutrition? What can help them?
I think for a lot of people, it's fear of failure. They think that in order to be healthy, they have to eat healthily 100% of the time. And I think that just small change, just being a little bit healthier some of the time, it all adds up. And if you can just do lots of small changes, end up, the sum of them is a much greater change. And that if you have, I don't know, eaten a packet of biscuits, that doesn't mean the day is gone. It means you still have lots of other healthy choices throughout the rest of the day, and we're all human. And I like a piece of cake as much as the next person, but that doesn't mean I eat cake every day, all day, every day. So I think it's fear of failure, fear of worry how much it's going to cost more, or that they're busy, time pressures. If you've got a busy job, or busy job and kids, it's it can be harder. But I think with some shortcuts, some realizing that it doesn't have to be perfect, you can really make some benefits.
And coming more now into your niche, which is women's health, how would you assess, or what are your thoughts on the medical approach to women's health?
So I think that's quite difficult. So talking about more what we sort of said, I think the medical approach is definitely, has been historically, you go and see an old male doctor and he tells you what to have. And I think more and more that's changing. It's a lot more of, a partnership with the patient, and obviously there are loads of female doctors now. And along that route, that change, I think now we're having, some preventative medicine there as well. We're empowering women to take up the screening programs, to check their own breasts, to talk about, lots of taboos out there that are, slowly not becoming, slowly being less of a taboo to talk about it. And I think where problems before were maybe medicalized, there's a lot more preventative medicine, but all that takes time. And you think if you go and see a GP, they've got 10 minutes to see you, and that includes, talking, examining, writing their notes. It's really difficult for them to sort of then talk about diet. So it's partly time pressure, I think. And also medical students have very little training or exposure to nutrition during their undergraduate training. And a recent review in The Lancet, a huge medical journal, found that nutrition is insufficiently incorporated. And I think that lots of medical students and GPs would really welcome more information on nutrition, so that they can more part of that multi-professional team, because at the moment they don't have the knowledge to do that. So I think it's training them up, giving doctors more, empowering them with more knowledge so they can help, and also training the medical students. So I consult for Culinary Medicine, which is a not-for-profit organisation that is teaching the medical students and the GP about nutrition, so that they can help. And then they need longer appointments, so less pressure on the healthcare system, so that if you've seen an A&E, it's not just, or in the GP, that they have time to talk to you about it and try to help prevent some of these things.
So because in the UK I suppose the key individuals, the key practitioners when we think of healthcare are doctors. Do you think that could create, if doctors were more empowered and more knowledgeable on nutritional intervention, do you feel that could create the cultural shift that we need in the UK? Because ultimately, I mean, our lifestyle in the UK is I would argue borderline Americanized. We tend to work
Mm.
quite long hours. We prioritize time, or the
Hmm.
saving time when it comes to getting our junk food and things like that. We tend to do big weekly shops rather than shop frequently throughout the week, which is quite different to even, our French neighbours. So I was just wondering on what you thought when it came to the ability for doctors to hopefully be able to create this cultural shift in the UK that might be needed.
Yeah, I think that I think GPs are paramount for that. To be honest, that GPs are generally fairly trusted, and I think that if you went to the GP and you had high blood pressure, or you're borderline type 2 diabetic, if they gave you, or if they if maybe a nutritionist was there, a dietitian, and you had more community access to them, and they could refer to there first, or give a list of these are things to go and eat to help your blood pressure, or don't eat this, not that, then I think it could be really powerful. But as you say, we are very Americanized, with lots of fast food, eating more junk food, arising obesity issues, and we do eat differently from the classic Mediterranean diet. So and I think that's even more apparent with COVID now, isn't it? That you just have to see the sort of lines of people all going out for queues for McDonald's as soon as lockdown was lifted. That was obviously the thing that everyone was getting out for. It's about trying to change mindset, which I think is hard.
Mm-hmm. I keep having to bring it back to your niche. I apologise. I'm pursuing points of interest to me at the same time as points of interest when it comes to women's health and your niche. But when it comes to women aging, as they do age, how would you propose that women better protect their bone health as they age?
Estrogen is a really important hormone for bone health, and as you age, your estrogen levels decline. So when you're about 50, you have only about a 2% chance of having osteoporosis, so softened bones and risk of fracture, whereas a lady in her 80s would have about 25% risk, just because of that estrogen declining with the menopause. So bone health is really important, and there are things you can do in your diet that help to improve your bone health. So eating good quality protein, so lean protein every meal. So that's like dairy, meat, poultry, seafood, legumes, beans. And calcium, I'm sure everyone's heard of calcium for your bones, so it's really important for your bone health. And as an adult, you need between 700 and 1,000 milligrams a day. And if you think of that, it sort of equates to roughly 2 slices of wholemeal bread, or a portion of broccoli, and a glass of milk, or plant-based fortified milk, and a yogurt and some fish. So you'd have to have all of that in one day just to get your calcium. Lots of good ways of getting calcium, so just like spinach, fortified bread, baked beans, tofu, dried fruit, and then fish that's tinned, because you eat the bones, like anchovies, tinned salmon, those things, because the bones contain all the calcium. So if you can incorporate those into your diet, then it's much better to get your calcium from your diet than it is to take a supplement. But if you're unable to do that, then you might be prescribed a supplement. And then along with calcium, vitamin D is really important for bone health as well. And that is produced in our bodies by the action of sunlight on the skin. So you do need to go outside and get your sun exposure for about 20 minutes a day. It used to be thought that sunscreen prevented your body from making vitamin D, but that's no longer the case. So no excuse to get, to not put your sun cream on. And so you need about 10 micrograms of 400 international units a day, and it can be really hard to get that in the UK, especially in the autumn and winter. So the current guidance is to supplement during the autumn and winter, and I really like the sprays that you can get. And then vitamin K is another really important micronutrient that's important in bone health, and there are lots of vitamin K covers lots of different molecules that are all part of vitamin K, and they're found in a range of foods, so green veg, fermented food, dairy, meat, And you need to make sure that you're eating not just one of those, but a range of those to make up all of the different elements of vitamin K. And there is mixed evidence as to whether actual supplementation with vitamin K improves bone strength and reduces fractures. But the evidence is strong enough for a number of countries to actually recommend it. So Japan is one of those. They say all menopausal women should be on vitamin K supplements. But at the moment, that's not the case in the UK. And as it's a fat-soluble vitamin and it's stored, we don't know what the possible side effects are if you have too much supplementation. And it's also really important that if you're on anything like blood thinning medication, that you shouldn't take vitamin K because it interferes with that. So it's probably better at the moment, while the evidence is still mixed, to be having it in your diet and just making sure that you're eating all of those things. I know that fermented food's really quite trendy now, but still not that many people eat it. So just making sure that you're covering all of those bases. And then there are a couple of others. So phosphorus and magnesium are usually found really abundantly in our diet. We shouldn't have to supplement those at all, but just as good examples. So phosphorus is in things like poultry, meat, dairy, whole grains, and then magnesium in things like pumpkin seeds, almond, beans, whole grains. And then the last thing I'd say for bone health, it isn't diet, but it's lifestyle, is resistance exercise. I'm sure you probably know far more about than me, but the NHS advised that adults over 35 should be having 30 minutes of resistance training a week. Sorry, at least twice a week. So if you can be doing, squat, weights, resistance bands, all of those things, then it's really important for your bone health.
Yeah, we commonly have what we commonly experience is a bit of a vicious cycle. So because people come into us with osteoporosis and they have this fear of fracture, they're less likely to do things which might expose them to the risk of fracture. There might be things that test their balance, test their strength, but then that's the thing that's going to stop them from falling and fracturing themselves in the first place. So yeah, it's. But I mean, I think as long as most people, when they do realise that, they're then quite motivated to put themselves in an environment where they're, I suppose, stressing their skeletal structure, the musculoskeletal structure, in a safe way for the reward, which would be stronger bones. But you also mentioned, I think we discussed this before, about phytoestrogens. You mentioned that phytoestrogens play a role as well.
Yeah, so phytoestrogens are less really for long-term health, but more for the short-term side effects. So lots of people are troubled by hot flushes as part of menopause, and there's sort of mixed evidence that phytoestrogens might be able to help with that. So phytoestrogens are like a plant-derived compound that have got a similar structure to human estrogens, which is obviously the hormone that decreases in the menopause. But the phytoestrogens have got a similar but much weaker activity. And there are some herbal medicines like St. John's wort, black cohosh, gemstone, and red clover that are all phytoestrogens. And there's some mixed evidence that these are decreased with hot flushes. So I think it's really try it and see whether it helps you. The one thing I should mention is that while we think that soya, which is a phytoestrogen, is probably safe in women with breast cancer, there's much less known about the others, especially red clover. And so if you've got breast cancer, don't take those. And also there's still concern that they might have interactions with heart disease, epilepsy and asthma. So I definitely advise speaking to a GP before starting any herbal medicine, and that there's no regulation with herbal medicine, so always buy from like a trusted supplier, because there's much less regulation. So check that you know what it is before you take it. And then I should just say that there are lots of foods that also contain phytoestrogen, and then naturally occur in things like soya, flaxseed, chickpeas, sesame, tea, apricots, and they're obviously a much weaker or version of these supplements where it's all concentrated together. So given that the supplements, there's lots of mixed evidence about the supplements, it's unlikely that eating just the food is going to have much benefit, because they're obviously much weaker than the supplements. So I think, include them in your diet, because generally, have other benefits as well. And if they help with your hot flushes, that's great. But they're not going to help everybody, and they might not help you.
Yeah, our herbalist, we have a herbalist here, Julia, and she's very good at the herbs that you recommended or that you suggested. She, I know from just discussing with her that she prescribes them quite regularly for postmenopausal women, but she's equally as frustrated because, as you said, that there's a lot of people claiming to be herbalists and a lot of people claiming to have knowledge of herbology, but aren't very, stringently trained as she might be. But and this is just me now trying to remember what I learned at university. So when we're talking about phytoestrogens and them having a similar effect to estrogen but a weaker effect, do they trigger the same receptor site as estrogen? Because I know that there is also contrasting debate that they act as inhibitors for the receptor site. So is it competitive inhibition? Is that what it's called? Where you have something similar that clogs up the receptor site but doesn't trigger the same response?
No, they are thought to trigger the same response, but just in a much weaker way. I think there's a lot of debate about this, but at the moment, that's sort of the main thing that they're thought to. They're not a competitive inhibitor. They are they're stimulating those same receptors, but just in a much weaker way.
Understand. Thank you. And wanted to know also about the common presentations that you might see, and or like interesting cases that you've had and how you've helped individuals with their women's health.
I think we've talked about a lot of that already, in that I think most people come because they're feeling not heard by their GP, or they want help with hot flushes, or they can't take HRT, or they don't want to take HRT. And so it's then about thinking about, what can you do for hot flushes? So you've got your phytoestrogens, but you've also acupuncture. There's weak evidence that acupuncture might help with that. I obviously don't do that, but just sort of lifestyle, thinking of lifestyle medicine. And then caffeine and alcohol. If you reduce caffeine and alcohol and spicy food, there's mixed evidence that helps. There's quite a lot of variation between individuals, but certainly reducing alcohol has got other health benefits, like lower heart disease.
Spicy food and caffeine. I've had on two of those. I've got a lot of women. Sorry.
This is why you're not menopausal.
But yeah, that's it.
But if you can consider reducing those, then it can help in some women with hot flushes. You've got reducing the caffeine, alcohol, spicy food, acupuncture, and then those phytoestrogen supplements, and then naturally occurring phytoestrogen foods, so foods with naturally occurring phytoestrogens. And then I think there's a lot more awareness now that once you go through the menopause and your estrogen levels decline, that you're at higher risk of cardiovascular disease, and people do want to mitigate that, really. So with the sort of natural aging process and menopause, there's an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, which is a general term for like disease of the blood vessels, narrowing of the arteries, and increased risk of blood clots, and that the whole aging process of the menopause and the decrease in estrogen and that process afterwards increases your risk of weight gain, which also leads to an increased risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, higher cholesterol levels, and that all then feeds back into an increased risk of cardiovascular disease as well. So there are things you can do to try to help reduce those risks. So if you reduce your fat content to less than 30% of your diet, so approximately 60 grams a day, and concentrate on having good quality fats, so extra virgin olive oil, avocado, seeds, nuts, rapeseed oil, all those polyunsaturated fats, and then eat at least 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. Try to replace refined carbohydrates with whole grains. So you're thinking of brown rice, brown bread, bulgur wheat, millet. And then if you can have fish a couple of nights a week, and have it, you know, regularly, and you're using your tinned salmon or fresh fish, then you're going to be getting the omega-3 and also that calcium from the tinned fish. Have at least 4 portions of nuts, seeds, legumes each week. And then try to cut down convenience foods that are processed with sugar and salt, and try to keep your alcohol levels less than 14 units per week, and a maximum of 2 to 3 glass units a day. And then choose whole grains, so like millet, bulgur wheat, and, you know, all of those different whole grains instead of refined carbohydrates, and that will help not only your bones but your heart, and also, you know, reduce your risk of hot flushes in some people.
Amazing, thank you so much. So, to summarize, we've got good lifestyle keeps the doctor away, but when it gets too late, go to the doctors.
Yes.
Make sure you're consuming a whole food, plant-based diet, when you can supplement that with your fish and your meat and your dairy, but especially oily fish, and even better if it's got the bones in for your calcium. Then we've got our phytoestrogens, which will come from herbal remedies and also from plant-based food anyway. And there's good evidence to suggest that phytoestrogens can help to battle the decline in estrogen as women age.
So mixed evidence.
Mixed evidence. Awesome, good stuff. And obviously to focus on an exercise regime which tries to promote strengthening.
Yeah, absolutely. Get that strengthened through your exercise, and that will help you keep the weight off, and also strengthen your bones. So it's and help with mental health. So I think combination of those lifestyle changes will really have you in tip-top form.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Harriet Holme. Can you tell us how to get in contact with you if we want to take advantage of your services? And I know that you said that you've also got a free ebook or a free course, something like that.
So I've got like a free nutrient planner, nutrient checklist, where you can just check off that you're doing all those things. It's like a sort of aid memoir, just to remind you of like a summary of those points, really, just to help guide you as to how to do that. So if you find me on Instagram, I'm at Healthy Eating Doctor, and that's the same for my website as well. That's www.healthyeatingdoctor.com, and you'll be able to find, there's a pop-up window if you or on the tab that says free resources, and you'll be able to download the menopause nutrient checklist. And if you want to do it by Instagram, just go to my bio, and there's a link in my bio. Just tap on there and you'll take you straight there. So it's probably much easier in Instagram. But yeah, and I've got I do have a book out, but it's on what to eat in pregnancy. So that's also available on my website. And yeah, so come and say hello on my website or Instagram. And if you've got any questions, come and ask me. I also do private video consultation, and yeah, lots of information all on my Instagram, all about trying to sort of myth bust and provide evidence-based, science-backed nutrition.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure.